We Are Family is a nonprofit organization here in Charleston that helps the LGBTQI youth community. I talked with the executive director of We Are Family, Nijeeah Richardson, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Nijeeah Richardson, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Obviously, you're the executive director of We Are Family, and obviously you all provide support and leadership development for youth who have been marginalized on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Describe We Are Family these days.
Yeah, so we are steadily growing, even in the wake of COVID-19 and all that it has done to devastate our communities. We continue to persevere and provide support to LGBTQ youth through an expansion of many different types of programming. Just to name a few, we continue to have our peer discussion groups virtually through Zoom now. We also continue to have the Trans Love Fund, where we provide microgrants to transgender individuals. We had to cancel our queer prom, unfortunately, this year. But we anticipate bringing it back as soon as, the pandemic has subsided, as well as some other programs that we're looking forward to having in the new year, such as a mental health assistance program where we can help provide free mental health services to LGBTQ youth by partnering with local therapists and mental health providers.
And where else are you, as We Are Family, that is growing right now?
Yeah, so as we're growing, that means for us, having a greater impact and serving more youth than ever. Like I said, we did have to cancel our queer prom, so that we were expecting to have over 200 youth in attendance this year. But even with that gone this year, we still continue to serve over 250 youth through our Spirit Day committee, our Spirit Day event, where we had a queer youth fest, through our Trans Love Fund and our peer discussion groups, as well as continuing to provide GSA support to schools.
And what exactly are those schools that you're lending your support to?
We have been reaching out to schools in the entire Charleston Tri-County area, and we've already attended. This was before COVID, but We attended 26 schools last year in person. And then we have continued to meet with GSAs virtually. So it's been over 20 schools that we are providing support to in starting a GSA or, helping to make their school more inclusive of those with, different gender identities, those who are marginalized on the basis of their sexual orientation.
Yes, ma'am. And let me go back to that, because We Are Family, as I mentioned, provides support and leadership development for youth who have been marginalized on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. This might be a tough question, Ms. Richardson, but how many of those people have been marginalized right now because of COVID?
Oh, so many. I'm not sure that I have a specific number, but LGBTQ youth in particular are heavily impacted by social isolation. Thinking about the fact that so many youth were able to, if they weren't in an affirming home, they could at least go to school and feel like they were experiencing, affirmation through teachers that use the correct names and pronouns, their friend groups. So I think that this pandemic has had a specific impact on LGBTQ youth when it comes to experiencing social isolation, as well as being stuck in a place that doesn't feel accepting. So many youth are experiencing that. And then on top of that, just LGBTQ people in general experience discrimination in employment. And so I think COVID has had a particular economic impact on LGBTQ people as a whole.
And how many of those LGBTQ people, particularly youth, are actually unemployed right now?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, there's not much in terms of just LGBTQ people in general. There's not many like statistics, so like we're not even counted in the census. So it's hard to say. However, We Are Family did help contribute funds to Campaign for Southern Equality's COVID-19 rapid response grants, and I believe they received they did like three, maybe more than that. They did several grant rounds, and each round, they had 100 to 200 applicants saying that they had been financially hit by COVID, and all of these folks were LGBTQ people. So it's clear that I think at least hundreds of people have been impacted who are LGBTQ by COVID financially.
And you said something very interesting just a second ago, but obviously you just mentioned that a lot of the LGBT people are not even counted in the census. Why is that the case right now in 2020?
Homophobia and transphobia. And I mean, it's top down, right? I mean, I think that clearly this administration has made specific attacks on transgender people and LGBTQ people. And so I think that is what contributes ultimately. It's just the homophobia and transphobia, people not thinking that, we matter and that we should be counted. But the reality is, and I think part of that is also not wanting to face how many people, in our communities are actually LGBTQ, because I think there are a lot more. We know that at least 10%, but I would venture to say, 30% of the population is LGBTQ. But if you don't count us, then you can't say that our issues matter, right? If you think that it's a very small amount of the population that certain issues affect, then you can easily say, well, that's not worth our time. That's not worth our investment. So yeah, it's homophobia and transphobia that contributes to all of that.
And what exactly are the issues right now that should be counted when it comes to the census and other issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think healthcare is one. Thinking about the fact that, a lot of trans people don't have access to healthcare, what's included in healthcare plans, especially in southern states, is a huge issue. I think also just going back to employment discrimination. I mean, I know that we've made some strides to say that, discrimination, happens towards LGBTQ people, but still in southern states, there are protections are lacking. Being able to be, fired for being LGBTQ, things like that continue to impact our communities, especially during this time. And also just, people who experience homelessness, and a lot of those people are LGBTQ. And so those are issues that continue to affect the lives of LGBTQ people. And that also this particular administration, the Trump administration, has made specific attacks against even trans women trying to access shelters, So yeah.
Where are there any available shelters right now for trans women here in Charleston?
Yeah, so that's a hard one. I mean, I think that there are shelters who say that they don't discriminate, but it can be really challenging to quantify or qualify that, especially if there's not a deliberate push to make that happen. So right now, the shelters that do exist in the Charleston area are supposed to be open to anybody, and so that's kind of where we are. We don't have any specifically for trans communities and LGBTQ communities.
Is anyone particularly trying to plan for that anytime soon in the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think it's really needed, but I'm not sure if that's something. It's definitely not something that I've seen the city invest in. So yeah, it'll take community organizations to make it happen if it happens.
And you talked earlier about those protections. What protections right now are you as an organization actually are advocating for?
Yeah, so many. So particularly this year, some of our young people were able to affect change at the state level, and they were able to get rid of a 30-plus-year-old law that said that, LGBTQ issues cannot be discussed in public schools except in relation to STDs, HIV. And so many teachers felt like they couldn't talk about LGBTQ issues and that they could be fired for that. And then it was also clearly unfair for, LGBTQ students who, are asking certain questions and can't get an answer. And so there was a lot of success in being able to strike that down. The state of South Carolina agreed to a consent to decree that said that, yes, this was unlawful. This is unconstitutional. And so we're really grateful for that.
And what are those questions that you want the LGBTQI youth to basically question right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we also, worked hard to advocate for was a comprehensive sex education curriculum that included LGBTQ people. So that's one thing, like being able to have comprehensive sex education where you can talk about, queer sex or queer people's bodies, right? And talk fully about consent and talk fully about sex without just talking about abstinence, only education. So those are some of the things that, we want to empower our youth to be able to talk about and have conversations about.
And how difficult is that conversation in the classroom?
I mean, I think it can be really challenging. I mean, if you experience a South Carolina education, then you know that many of our teachers are not equipped to have certain conversations, and that I think conversations around our bodies and sex continue to be stifled, and teachers aren't given the tools to be able to have certain conversations. So yeah.
And what tools would you ask, obviously the local government and other agencies to give to these teachers right now so that these conversations can happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to even look outside of the school system for answers. There are plenty of organizations doing amazing work on sex education that, the schools can hire to help provide resources to teachers to make sure they have all the, they're able to answer tough questions, that they have a clear understanding of how to be affirming of queer identities, how to be affirming of bodies, and not just point to, abstinence only, or, become, I don't want to say shy, but like just not talk about the things that these youth are searching for the answers for. So I think there are lots of resources and tools out there that can come outside of the school system. Yeah.
And this might be a redundant question, Ms. Richardson, but what other answers are the youth looking for right now or searching for?
I mean, ultimately, I think it's what we all are looking for. We're all looking for acceptance. We're all looking for, beyond acceptance, affirmation, validation of who we are. So I think those are some of the things that youth in everything that I've just discussed, it's all about being affirmed and validated. Being able to sit in your sex ed class and be validated for your queer identity, being able to go to a homeless shelter and be validated, and affirmed in your identity and placed in the right gender population based on your gender identity. So all of this, I think, boils down to being validated and being affirmed and told that, you're no less than anyone else, and that, you matter.
And what is that gender population right now?
I'm not sure what you mean by.
Yeah, you just mentioned. Obviously when it comes to affirmation and obviously validation. What is that gender population that you're referring to?
Well, I was just referring to like, being affirmed in the fact that, if you're trans, that and you're a trans woman, that you're going to be in the population that is women, right? You're not going to be placed with men because that's not affirming of your identity. That's not seeing you for who you are. So yeah, that's what I mean by that.
Let me talk to you about that, because obviously a lot of the trans women are actually placed in the male population when it comes to obviously arrests and jail population. What's that population? What's that data right now that you're getting from Charleston County?
Oh, well, I have no idea about that. I'm not even sure that's something that's actually calculated, but we can tell from anecdotal experiences where, trans women are talking about their experiences where that happens. But that's definitely not something that the city of Charleston, counts or calculates, or, if you can't even see that someone is trans and affirm them for that, then you're not going to say like, oh, we did this wrong thing and put this person in the wrong space than where they're supposed to go. So I think all those things are sort of unknown, except within community experiences where we have this collective understanding of these are the things that are happening. These are the struggles and issues that people are encountering, and they're, voicing that.
And what else are the trans community really dealing with right now in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just all the things that, I said earlier about, accessing healthcare, employment, experiencing homelessness, mental health issues, things that, that are a result of transphobia in systems that heavily impact the lives of individuals.
And I know the Trans Love Fund obviously is a program that the Alliance for Full Acceptance, AFFA, and We Are Family obviously dedicate as far as supporting the trans community of South Carolina to providing emergency funds to trans identified individuals through South Carolina. What exactly are those emergency funds for?
Yeah, so people can apply to the Trans Love Fund and, receive support, financial support in accessing medical care, mental health care, as well as legal services, just needing funds for rent, needing to pay bills, pretty much anything, because we know that trans individuals have a tough time, and specifically trans women of color have they experience discrimination at an incredibly high rate that impacts being able to be financially secure.
And what rate is that for mental health when it comes to the trans community?
So yeah, there are high percentages of experiences of mental health issues among trans individuals. I'm not sure about the specific number or percentage at this time, but I know it's incredibly high.
Incredibly high. And I know, obviously, when I spoke with you for Quintin's close-ups last year, you basically said, hey, you want people to stay in Charleston, particularly the LGBTQI community, and not flee to somewhere that's more liberal. Let me ask you a political question. Is Charleston more liberal now?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, how do you use the word liberal, right? Like, yes, Charleston voted blue, and continues to vote blue. So there seems to be some indication of liberalism in Charleston specifically, but I think that we need more than just a liberal city to enact change. I think we need a city that's going to be progressive about issues affecting our communities, our Black communities, our trans communities, our LGBTQ communities, our communities who are working class and low income. And so, yeah, I don't think that Charleston's more. I think that it's still the same sort of liberalism that maintains a status quo, that maintains that certain people have power and certain people don't. certain people have agency over their bodies, and certain people don't.
And what do you see as the status quo beyond the common status quo that you actually see and hear every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think the status quo is just that that Charleston is, I think, a space where it can be challenging for LGBTQ people, queer people, trans people to really thrive. And I want to see a homeless shelter here that is fully funded, that is specific to LGBTQ people and trans people. I want to see. I want to see our police department be held accountable to, to police brutality against, Black bodies, against queer bodies. I want to see all those things happen, and I haven't seen those things happen yet.
And what should they be accountable for right now, based on the experiences that you've heard and seen?
Yeah, I think that, what I just talked about, like police brutality, they should be accountable to that. They should be accountable to, why is so much of the police, or why is so much of the city's budget, allocated towards the police department? Why aren't we investing in, youth programs, healthcare, things like that for the people? And that makes me think of also the People's Budget Coalition that has been doing amazing work in trying to hold the police department accountable.
Yes, ma'am. And you talk about programs. How progressive will your mental health program be in the next couple of years?
Well, it'll be our first time launching it, so I hope that we can do it justice, and we will try really hard to, our priority will be youth of color, youth who are from low-income families, being able to prioritize their mental health needs over, youth who are able to access mental health care pretty easily.
And I know, obviously, you talked about the people's budget and the money that, from the police department that could go to, obviously other places. Hypothetically speaking, how much money would you want from the police budget to go to, say, the LGBT youth in programs?
Oh, well, if it were up to me, 100% of the budget. But I mean, that's not realistic, obviously. And there's so many other things that I think that should be allocated towards as well. Like, housing insecurity in Charleston is continuing to skyrocket. So, I think 30% of the budget would be great to go towards LGBTQ youth programs.
And I know, obviously, We Are the Family began in April 1995 under the direction of Tom Myers, and we are the family born from the love of the father for his son. Let me ask you this, Ms. Richardson. What direction is your organization headed into now, 20 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is just continuing to expand our programs. When we started in 1995, there was there was two programs, really. There was one program in which it was the goal of the organization to speak with churches and organizations and really make them understand what issues impacted LGBTQ youth. And I think that then out of that, Safe Space came about, which is one of our peer discussion groups that we still have today. But out of all of that, we now have close to 7 programs that are up and running, and so that's really been, I think, the heart of this organization's growth has been recognizing that there are a multitude of issues impacting LGBTQ youth, and so what are the programs we can create and expand on to address all of those needs.
And in my last interview with you for Quintin's Close-Up, she basically said, hey, the We Are Family organization wants to highlight people's stories, obviously the LGBTQI youth, and share them. I know recently they had obviously Transgender Remembrance Week and Transgender Awareness events as well. What stories are you able to share right now that will highlight those people?
Such a good question. Um, well, we actually just had our 25 years of We Are Family virtual event. And so that can actually be still viewed but at www.avcast.me/we are 25. And so there, we actually had like 4 or 5 youth come on there and share their stories with, their journey over the last year or however long it's been that they've been with We Are Family. And so I think one of the main things is one of the main stories that keeps emerging, I think, is that We Are Family creates community, that it creates family for LGBTQ youth, youth who didn't know that they could be so fully supported and recognized, come to our programs, come to Safe Space, and see that there are other youth like them. They see that there are adults who support them in their journey. And now we have, youth who have been with us and were shy and, nervous to attend. And now they're in leadership positions in the organization. So that's kind of the story of, the youth that we work with and what we want. We want our life's work, our organizational work for LGBTQ youth to be. We want them to see themselves being able to rise and emerge as leaders here in South Carolina, that they don't have to go somewhere else to find jobs, to find leadership opportunities where they can be fully accepted and be themselves. That exists right here.
Right here. And this is my last and second question, but let me ask you this, Ms. Richardson. Which one of those youth at your particular organization really resembles a younger version of you?
Oh, I don't know that there's anyone that resembles me. I mean, they're much more, brave and have resources that I didn't know was available when I was their age. I didn't come out until I was in college. So we have incredible youth, and I see a little bit of myself in pretty much all of them. But I wasn't nearly as brave and out as they are.
And you talked earlier about obviously helping the kids become, leaders in the community. How did you get to be a leader in your community?
I think that leadership is interesting because I think you have to know when to lead and also know when to follow. So I think I'm pretty much an introvert. So I'm a person who, you tell me what to do and I will do it. I will be the person behind the scenes, making the magic happen. But I'm not really, I'm not someone who typically steps into a leadership role. But then I found myself in this one. And I think that part of that was recognizing that it was my calling at this point in time, that it was an opportunity, and that also it was needed at this juncture of We Are Family. So that's kind of sort of how I found myself in this particular leadership role. I've always known that I wanted to help people and help my community in particular. I just didn't know that I'd find myself here so soon.
So soon. And obviously you are, as a leader of We Are Family, what are you going to be following next?
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, ma'am. As a leader for We Are Family, what will you follow next? What directions will you follow next as far as the growth of this particular organization?
Yeah, so I think, continuing to grow slowly but surely and in a way that's really smart and necessary. So we're really trying to reach a place of stability and capacity building. And so we've been working on that. And, I think this next program, providing mental health assistance, will be sort of our next area of growth. We've also been able to add 2 part-time positions this year. So that's also been part of our growth. as an organization, but also, of course, like we want to continue to grow our impact. We want to continue to serve as many youth as possible. 400 youth is great, but 1,000 youth is even better. So we're always going to be shooting to be able to really make an impact in the lives of as many youth as possible.
Nijeeah Richardson, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin.
You're very welcome.